Well, hey guys, did you know that for 20 years now, we have been treating dynamic wrinkles with Botox? And in this video, I'm gonna give you a deep dive history into how it is we started treating wrinkles with a neurotoxin, Botox. But before getting into it, please give this video a thumbs up if you like skincare content from a board-certified dermatologist. Be sure you're subscribed and you have your bell notifications on. That way YouTube will let you know as soon as my videos go live. Comment below on if you have ever heard of botulism, a fatal foodborne illness. Botulism, it has been around a long time, dating back to the 1700s. 1738, there was a big outbreak in southern Germany, and a lot of outbreaks were associated with meats. People didn't know exactly what was going on. In fact, it was originally termed sausage poisoning. Blood sausage, at that time, preservation systems were not ideal, didn't have refrigeration, and there was even a period of time where there was a call to limit production of blood sausage because people were getting so sick. Signs of botulism include slurred speech, droopy eyelids, muscle weakness that is quite profound, as well as difficulties breathing and vomiting. Between 1817 and 1822, a German doctor by the name of Justinus Kerner, he did a lot more research into what the heck was going on with sausage poisoning. And he made a keen observation that patients who had sausage poisoning, or botulism, which we now know it as, they actually had paralysis of the muscles, but not the sensory system, meaning they could still feel things, smell things, see things, and they didn't have any issues with cognition, with their brain. Their brain was perfectly functional. So he made the observation and concluded that sausage poisoning was actually a problem with the motor nerves, basically the nerves that tell your muscles to contract. He hypothesized that if he could figure out what the active substance was causing sausage poisoning, then he could harness that as a treatment for other issues, which we now know is absolutely true. We do use the active substance, if you will, from sausage poisoning to treat a variety of illnesses like migraines. It wasn't until 1895 that a Belgian scientist by the name of Emile Pierre van Ermingem, he was actually responsible for identifying the bacteria that produces the active substance that leads to sausage poisoning, or botulism. At the time, they named it Bacillus botulinus. Bacillus means rod-shaped. This bacteria has the shape of a rod. Later, it would be renamed Clostridium botulinum, and botulus comes from the Latin word for sausage. It wasn't until 1905, however, that they figured out that the active substance was working to inhibit the release of neurotransmitters at the neuromuscular junction. What the heck is all of that medical jargon? Well, a neurotransmitter is basically a chemical that a nerve releases to signal to another cell type, whether it be another nerve cell or the cells that make up your muscles, telling them to contract. Going back in time to 1817 to 1822, Dr. Kerner was definitely onto something, and other physicians and scientists later followed suit and kind of trying to push his hypothesis that this compound could potentially be used as a treatment. Clostridium botulinum bacteria actually makes 7 serotypes of botulinum toxin. Botulinum toxin type A is the most potent. In 1928, a man by the name of Herman Summer at UCSF went about isolating botulinum toxin type A, the most potent. Then in the 1940s, scientists went about purifying and crystallizing botulinum toxin A. A man by the name of Edward Shantz at Fort Detrick in Maryland had interest in it as a potential bioweapon. But later on in the 70s, by 1972, Shantz had relocated his research lab to the University of Wisconsin, and it was there that he purified and produced at scale a large batch of botulinum toxin type A that actually was in use until the 1990s. So here we are in the 70s, and we know what causes sausage poisoning. We know the bacteria, we know the toxin, we know how the toxin works, and we're able to produce it at scale. An ophthalmologist by the name of Scott Frank at UCSF started doing animal studies looking at botulinum toxin as a treatment for strabismus. strabismus, which is basically where the eyes don't look in the same direction. In 1973, botulinum toxin was being tested in primates, and by 1978, the FDA granted approval for testing small amounts of botulinum toxin in actual human volunteers. Then by 1980, you had a landmark paper demonstrating botulinum toxin as a treatment to correct gaze abnormalities in humans. By 1989, the FDA had approved something called oculinum, botulinum toxin, for the treatment of strabismus as well as blepharospasm, eye twitching that can be very debilitating. So during the 80s, a lot of ophthalmologists were using botulinum toxin to treat their patients who had strabismus and blepharospasm. Then in the mid-1980s, a now famous ophthalmologist in Vancouver by the name of Jean Carruthers actually is responsible for making the observation, somewhat serendipitously, that the patients she was injecting with botulinum toxin for blepharospasm actually were starting to show improvement in frown lines. It was observed that patients appeared to have a more serene, quote, untroubled appearance. One of her patients pointed out very angrily, "Hey, you didn't treat me here." And Dr. Carruthers was like, "I didn't realize that you were having twitch in that area. That's why I didn't put the treatment there." And the patient goes, "Oh, no. I'm not worried about that. I just want my wrinkles to smooth out like they always do when you inject that medicine." So when Jean Carruthers made this observation, she thought about her spouse, Alistair Carruthers, who is a dermatologist, and at that time was struggling to offer cosmetic treatments that really improved the look of wrinkles in the forehead. At the time, using fillers and things with suboptimal results. And she said, "Hey, I made this observation. I think perhaps it could really be something that maybe could help target those wrinkles." So the story goes that the Carruthers then tried injecting a small amount of botulinum toxin into the eyebrow area of their assistant. They then got about 17 more patients ranging anywhere from age 35 to 41, injecting them with botulinum toxin. This constituted the first clinical study on botulinum toxin for improving dynamic wrinkles. So that really shook things up quite a bit in the cosmetic world. And between 1992 and 1997, use of botulinum toxin for the treatment of dynamic wrinkles became so popular that Allergan actually temporarily ran out of it. By 2002, botulinum toxin was already proven to be useful for the treatment of not only strabismus and blepharospasm, but also hemifacial spasticity, post-stroke spasticity. Neurologists were using it to also treat headaches. It was being used to treat back pain, cervical dystonia, and in dermatology, we're coming to learn that it's a useful treatment for hyperhidrosis, otherwise known as excessive sweating. As a side note, I have a recent video on treatments for excessive sweating or hyperhidrosis. I go into detail in that video as to how it is that botulinum toxin works to address hyperhidrosis. So check that out if you're coping with that issue. And an open label study of over 800 patients confirmed the safety and efficacy of botulinum toxin for the treatment of dynamic wrinkles. And in April of 2002, the FDA granted approval for the use of botulinum toxin for the non-surgical reduction of glabellar wrinkles.
Yes!
All right, you guys, so that's the history of Botox and how it came to be used for the treatment of dynamic wrinkles. Just a simple observation of a side effect that was welcomed and requested on the part of an ophthalmologist who also happened to have a dermatologist spouse. The two together were a dynamic duo in paving the way for the use of neurotoxins in aesthetic medicine. I hope you found this video interesting. Let us know in the comments if you have ever pursued botulinum toxin, whether it be Botox, Dysport, or Xeomin for wrinkles. And if you guys enjoyed this video, on the end slate, I'm going to have a recent video I did on the history of Clinique. So if you like these kind of historical videos, definitely check that one out. But if you enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.